A gavel cracks like a starter pistol, and the courtroom jolts to attention. The boy in the Orange County jumper doesn't flinch. He's learned not to. Never give them the tremor, the startle, the fear. His hands are cuffed in front, and his chin is high, the way his foster dad taught him to hold it when bullies circle. The nameplate in front of the bench reads Horn, Harold Whitcomb. He does not look at the boy's file when he speaks. He looks straight at the boy as if the pages can't possibly tell him anything he hasn't already decided to think. Another ward of the state, Judge Whitcomb says. Dry as chalk. Another lesson he won't learn. Murmurs ripple across the gallery. Defendants, families, board reporters, a couple of law students. The bailiff clears his throat. The boy says nothing. The fluorescent lights bleach the boy's brown skin a shade closer to the walls. Name, the judge demands. Malik Carter, the boy says, voice even. 16 and a half, he doesn't add. He learned where honesty becomes ammunition. Charged with felony shoplifting, resisting arrest and obstruction. The judge recites it like breakfast orders. And your placement? He says placement like it's a stray dog's crate. Foster, Malik answers, with the Hargreaves. The judge's mouth turns, a small disdainful parenthesis. Of course, he leans back. Mr. Carter, I've been seeing boys like you since before you were born. Do you know what the common denominator is? A public defender. Malik has never met whispers. Don't answer that. But Malik's already learned that silence can be twisted into a smirk and defiance. He answers anyway. He says, judges who think they already know me. It earns a snicker from someone in the back and an instant glare from the bench. The judge's gavel ticks once, like a metronome of disapproval. Bail is set at $25,000, Judge Whitcomb says briskly, eyes flicking past the public defender's protest. Given the lack of parental supervision and the defendant's history of, I don't have a history, Malik blurts, and then closes his mouth on the words because he hears Mrs. Hargreaves in his head. Choose your fights. Choose your timing. The judge lifts a brow. You have a history with me now. In the back row, a woman stops writing. She's been pretending to take notes on other cases. A spectator with a simple leather notebook and a quiet tilt to her head. She has the kind of stillness that makes a person invisible to the impatient. Now she uncaps her pen, recaps it again, and stands. The bailiff's eyes flash a warning. No disruption, but she's already walking down the aisle. She doesn't stride, she threads herself through the air. Dark suit, dark hair, a single thin silver ring. When she reaches the bar, she doesn't speak to the judge first. She turns to the boy in cuffs and lowers her voice so that it belongs only to him. Mr. Carter, she says gently. My name is Ava Beaumont. If you want me, I'll represent you. Pro bono. It is quiet enough to hear the fluorescent hum. Somewhere, a reporter's phone vibrates against a notepad. Malik's first instinct is to doubt anything that arrives as a miracle in a room built for sentences. His second instinct is survival. When a door opens, put your foot in it. Okay, he says, please. The bailiff bristles. The judge's brows climb. The public defender exhales. Half relief, half I didn't want to lose this one, but thank God someone with time can take it. Judge Whitcomb leans forward. And you are? She turns finally to the bench. Ava Beaumont, Your Honor. Her voice is measured, bored almost, like a pilot performing a safety demo she's done 1,000 times. Bar number 387521. I'll be filing a notice of appearance today. I asked the court to vacate the bail order and set a hearing this afternoon on recognizance. And someone in the second row whispers, is that the Beaumont? The one who took down a police precinct's unlawful stop and frisk quotas with 3 depositions and a cardboard box of annotated body cam clips. The one who keeps photos of kids who aged out of foster care, places them like saints above her desk. The judge tries to look like he doesn't recognize the name. Fails. He taps the gavel once. Ms. Beaumont, he says, we run an orderly calendar in this courtroom. She nods. Then let's put this in order. And just like that, everything in the room edges a few degrees toward possible. The courtroom is a machine with gears you can't see, clerks that shuffle paper with coded efficiency, prosecutors that exchange barbed courtesies with defenders, a bailiff who scans the room like a lighthouse scanning for storms. Malik can feel the machine judging where he fits. He can feel the way it waits to absorb him like grit in a bearing, Ava doesn't ask the judge for permission to approach. She files the formality with the clerk without fanfare, pages crisp. It's not arrogance. It's an old lesson. By the time you ask permission in a place that's stacked against you, you're already 2 steps behind. Your Honor, she says, the state's bail request was made without a showing of flight risk and without considering the statutory factors, including the defendant's educational enrollment and community ties. I am prepared to make a proffer now. The prosecutor opens his mouth, discovers it's dry, and reaches for a paper cup of water. He's young. His suit is from a store that sells suits to people trying to look like they've always worn one. His nameplate says J. Renfield. Malik will call him Renfield in his head long after he learns his first name, because something in the man's eyes says assistant more than author, a person serving a script written by others. Briefly, the judge says, skeptical, annoyed. A man who had just tasted the small pleasure of sounding tough and now has to chew his words again. Ava nods once. Mr. Carter has no prior adjudications. He's a junior at Franklin High with a 3.1 GPA. He plays pickup at the Y with a City League coach who is in the gallery. She gestures without, Al looking to the left. And he has never missed a court date because this is his first court date. He's been in one foster placement for nearly 2 years. The Hargreaves are here. A woman stands tall, in a gray cardigan with worry worn into the sleeves, and a man next to her lifts his hand. They look like the kind of people who always bring extra sandwiches to picnics. Ava continues. The state's proffer of facts is incomplete. The store's transaction log shows a pending verification flag triggered at the exact time of the arrest. That means payment authorization was in process when Mr. Carter was detained. I obtained that record 10 minutes ago from counsel's discovery packet, still warm from the copier. I asked that bail be vacated and that we set a recognizance release with standard conditions. Renfield recovers his voice. Your Honor, the defendant fled when officers arrived. Walked out the automatic doors holding his backpack. Ava corrects, mild as rain. Because a 19-year-old security guard waved him forward while speaking to the cashier. A fact the guard included in his incident report on page 2. Which the state has attached but not read. She hands copies to the clerk with a practiced swivel of her wrist. Section 2, paragraph 3, line 4. I can wait. The judge scowls at the paper. He hates being made to read on camera. He hates it more when a lawyer's certainty implies that the reading will make him look stubborn or inattentive. The room waits while he scans. He sighs. Ms. Beaumont, he says, this is an arraignment, not a trial. It's also a cage, Your Honor, she says, quiet but not soft. If we're going to put a child in one, we should be exact. A ripple again, half admiration, half alarm. The bailiff's fingers find the butt of his radio, a reflex without thought. Malik breathes slowly, counting an old rhythm in his head. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. Coach taught him that when free throws felt like spotlights. The judge looks at Malik for the first time as something other than a silhouette under a case number. If I release you and you disappear, Mr. Carter, who loses? Malik doesn't glance at Ava. He doesn't ask permission to speak. Me, he says. I lose. My spot at school. The Hargreaves, basketball, my chance to not be the thing you've decided I am. The room stills. The judge sets his jaw. He wants to teach a lesson. He wants to demonstrate that he, not the headlines, runs this room. He also knows, in that old judge part of his brain, that a bad bail call in a high-profile lawyer's first 5 minutes is the sort of thing that generates complaints. That generate meetings that generate him staring at a wall while someone from the commission says words like community confidence. Recognizance with standard conditions, he says abruptly. Daily check-ins with pretrial services for the first week, then twice weekly. Curfew is 10 p.m. Defense will produce proof of school enrollment by noon tomorrow. Violations will be sanctioned. We'll set a preliminary hearing for Friday at 9. The gavel taps. It sounds less like a gavel this time and more like a reluctant compromise. A slow exhale spreads through the pews. The bailiff moves toward Malik. The cuffs come off with a click that feels to Malik like the release of a held breath he didn't know he'd been holding since last summer. The metal had always been heavier than it looked. Ava bends her head close as they lead him to the side door for processing. Don't talk to anyone in the hallway about the case. Keep your shoulders back. We'll meet in the conference room downstairs in 20 minutes. The Hargreaves will be there. He nods. Thank you. She tilts her head. You thanked me before I earned it. Let me catch up. The conference room is the color of old manila folders, walls, table, even the blinds that any son would be ashamed to push through. A cheap clock ticks with all the cheer of a lifeguard counting seconds underwater. Ava props her notebook on a stack of case reporters because the table sits a little low. The chairs were designed to remind you you're not a partner. Mr. Hargreaves brings a paper bag with sandwiches because of course he does. Mrs. Hargreaves unwraps one and puts it in front of Malik without asking if he's hungry, which is the only polite way to ask a teenager if he's hungry. And he is. Ava waits until he's taken a bite and then begins because she's learned that people tell you more from behind a mouthful of bread. Tell me what happened, she says, from before you walked into the store to when you saw the blue lights. Malik explains. He needed a socket wrench set. Coach has an old van that rattles like a metal skeleton, and the team's portable hoop needed to be bolted to a new base if they were going to take it to the elementary school on Saturday. He had $37 from mowing a yard and from the Hargreaves allowance. He scanned the kit at his self-checkout. The machine flashed a yellow box. Payment pending. He waited. It flashed again. Behind him, the security guard waved at someone. "You're good, kid. Line's long." And Malik did what he thought was right. He walked forward, bag in his backpack, receipt pending on the store app. He made it 3 feet outside when 2 officers shouted hands, and he froze. "I didn't run," he says. "I spun. They say spinning is running. I spun because someone yelled behind me and I thought." He stops because the word thought is too close to the word learned. Learn to keep your body where you can see the hands coming. Ava's pen moves in short dashes. "You have the app?" He nods. It sent a receipt like 10 minutes later. It says processed after manual review. I didn't see my phone buzz because He looks at his wrists and doesn't finish the sentence because he doesn't have to. Ava nods. "We'll need that screenshot. Forward it to this secure address." She slides a card across. A plain email with a domain that says I build my tools and don't wait for other people to lend me theirs. Mr. Hargreaves clears his throat. "Ms. Beaumont, we can cover a fee." Ava holds up a hand. "I'm pro bono on this. If we get a sanction against the store or fees from the state, I'll ask the court to send them to the youth rights clinic that paid for my investigator." Mrs. Hargreaves leans forward. "Why us? Why Malik?" Ava looks at Malik, not at the Hargreaves. "Because I recognize the look he gave the judge," she says. "I used to practice it in the mirror, so I wouldn't cry where it counts against you." She lets that hang long enough to shift the gravity in the room. People relax when they don't have to wonder why help arrived. They lean in when they see the person across from them understands that the world is made of locks and keys, and some people grow up learning to copy them by candlelight. "Here's the play," she continues. "I want body cam from both officers, the store's full incident log, the self-checkout terminal's authorization feed, and the security guard's training file. We'll subpoena the guard's prior incident reports. Kids get waved through all the time, and the store backfills with suspicious behavior when it goes wrong." Renfield knocks politely because even prosecutors prefer to pretend conference rooms are neutral ground. He steps in with a file he doesn't want to give up. "Discovery," he says, and places it on the table. He glances at Malik and then looks away, as if eye contact might be entered into the record. Ava doesn't reach for the file. "We'll need the terminal log and the internal audit triggers," she says. "Not just that packet." Renfield manages a smile that reads like a shrug. "We'll see what we can do. You'll do what the law requires," she says cheerfully, "and what your conscience allows. They don't have to be the same if you're in a hurry." He swallows. He isn't sure if he likes her. He is sure he doesn't like feeling like a rookie who wandered into the wrong gym. When he leaves, Mr. Hargreaves exhales slowly. "That man looks like he irons his socks," he says. Malik almost laughs, but the laugh catches because he knows the line a second too late and the reflex got rusted in holding cells. Ava turns the notebook so they can see a list labeled clocks. "There are 4 clocks in cases like this," she says. "The court's clock, deadlines and dates. The state's clock, how long before they realize they're wrong or decide to double down. The public clock, how long before someone around here decides to care. And yours." She taps the last line. "The clock inside your chest that speeds up every time you see a uniform. We can't stop the first 3. We can only make them waste their own time, but we can slow the 4th. How?" Malik asks. "By telling you what happens next before it happens," she says. "Surprises are adrenaline's best friend. We evict surprises." She outlines the next 48 hours in the calm tone of a flight attendant who doesn't believe in turbulence. Malik will check in with Pretrial at 4. He will go home. He will keep his phone charged. He will not talk to anyone from the store if they call. He will send her the screenshot and the list of anyone who saw him at the register. She will file motions for preservation of evidence and for release of the body cam footage in advance of the preliminary hearing. She will also file a motion asking the judge to recuse himself for prejudicial comments at arraignment. Not because she expects to win, but because she wants the judge to feel her breath on his neck. And you, she says, turning to the Hargreaves, will tell me if anyone visits the house, including Child Protective Services, which sometimes believes it is a partner to the criminal process instead of the child. Mrs. Hargreaves nods fiercely. He's our son at home, she says, whatever the file says. Good, Ava says. Then we're a team. That night, Malik lies awake in his small room under a poster of a basketball player caught in the physics of a jump. Outside the window, the streetlight throws down a square of light like a map for a trick he hasn't learned. He scrolls up to the top of the email chain with Ava, reading the header again. Subject Carter, authorization terminal log, body cam. He clicks the screenshot open and sees the little green check mark with the timestamp that might as well be a sunrise. Payment verified 12/14/32 p.m. He closes his eyes and replays the moment the judge asked him who loses if he runs. He thinks of his coach telling him the hardest part of a layup is pretending gravity isn't personal. His phone buzzes. It's Coach, proud of you for keeping your cool. The court is just a gym with pews. Same rules. Breathe, look up, pass to the open teammate. I know you don't have to be reminded, but I'm reminding you anyway. Malik smiles in the dark. He texts back, we're gonna fix the hoop Saturday. Coach replies with a single wrench emoji and a heart, which is coach language for I believe in you. Down the hall, the Hargreaves whisper. They whisper because they love him and because love comes with fear. They whisper about their budget. They whisper about whether the neighbors will see the news. They whisper about moving to a different district, about pulling strings for a different judge if the motion gets denied. They whisper the way people do when a system larger than them has reached into their house and set something fragile on a table and walked away. Across town, Renfield sits under the flicker of a lamp with a stack of discoveries he wishes were thinner. He flips to the incident report's second page and reads the line Ava pointed to. He reads it again. He recognizes the shape of a mistake and the possibility of a shortcut. He also recognizes the expectation that he will not take either. He scribbles a note to the store's counsel about the terminal log. And then, because he is young and the world is not done teaching him, he deletes it and writes a more polite version that asks for less. In a small apartment that smells like old pizza boxes and new ambition, the security guard replays the arrest on his phone. He doesn't like the way his voice sounds when he hears it. He also likes the likes on his private account where he posted a story that says, nail them before they bolt. And in a quiet office lined with books and two-frame photos of other people's kids, Ava closes her notebook and looks at a third photo no one else sees. A teenage girl in a county jumper practicing not to shake in a courtroom where a man with a gavel taught her the taste of humiliation. She sets the photo down gently and starts drafting the motion to recuse. She writes the judge's name like it were an address she knows she will one day move out of. Friday comes like a summons and feels like a test. The courthouse smells like old varnish and anxiety. Malik wears the only dress shirt he owns. Mrs. Hargreaves ironed it twice, as if pressing could erase fear's wrinkles. The courtroom is fuller today. The young reporters are here with fresh batteries. A couple of older ones linger in the back row, hunting a larger story. The Beaumont effect, the possibility that a small case becomes a big mirror. Judge Whitcomb takes the bench with a face like a closed door. Ava and Renfield announce their appearances. Malik stands when told to and sits when signaled. The Hargreaves fold their hands together as if they're one person holding one prayer. Ava opens. Your Honor, the defense moves to suppress the arrest because there was no probable cause at the moment of detention. We also move for the immediate release of the body camera footage and the store's terminal authorization logs. The state's entire theory hinges on the assumption that the transaction had failed. The evidence shows it had not. Renfield adjusts his tie. The state believes the officers had reasonable suspicion based on the defendant's behavior. Ava doesn't interrupt. She lets him say behavior because she knows that word is a wheeled suitcase into which people pack their prejudices and wheel them through security with a smile. When he is done, she simply clicks a remote and the courtroom monitor flickers to life with the body cam's first frame, the view from the chest of an officer striding into the store. The timestamp at the bottom reads 12:14:20. The officer's breath sounds like wind in a cheap microphone. The camera catches the checkout line, the security guards wave, the slow machine blinking, pending, and Malik stepping forward because the guard said he could. 10 seconds later on the video, the app on Malik's phone dings. A faint sound, barely heard, and a green checkmark flashes on his screen. The room watches the checkmark like sunrise breaking over a parking lot. Ava pauses the video and lets the still image sit there. Then she looks at the judge, not angry, not triumphant, simply precise. Your Honor, that is what truth looks like when you don't rush it. Malik feels for the first time since the cuffs that the machine might slip a gear. He feels the room leaning with him instead of against him. He feels the first door that opened becomes a hallway, and then something else happens, something he couldn't have guessed. The judge, who never looks at the gallery when he can help it, glances past the bar and locks eyes with a woman in a dark suit who returns his gaze with a stillness that is older than this morning and younger than regret. For a moment, the judge looks like a man who has remembered the last time he was this confident and wrong. The preliminary hearing doesn't end with a dramatic dismissal. Real courtrooms dislike crescendos. But the judge is forced to release the body cam to the defense and to order the store to produce the terminal authorization logs. He sets a suppression hearing in 2 weeks, which is how you say, let's all pretend we have time, in a building that runs on everyone's borrowed minutes. Outside the courtroom, microphones bloom like dandelions. Reporters want a Beaumont quote. They want a line they can pour over their footage like glossy syrup. Ava gives them the opposite of syrup. We're grateful the court ordered basic transparency, she says. Mr. Carter is a student. He deserves a fair process. When one reporter pushes, Counselor, do you think the judge's ward of the state remark shows bias? Ava simply replies, I think our filings speak for themselves, and steers Malik toward the elevators before anyone can ask him the kind of question the internet would use to eat him for breakfast. In the elevator, Malik watches the numbers blink and tries to believe that each floor is a mountain they've already climbed. Do they always ask like that? He asks. Ava smiles sideways. They always ask the question that they can cut into 30 seconds. Our answer has to be the story you can live with for 30 years. He nods, even though the math of time feels like someone else's subject. He has learned this week that hours are long and weeks are short, and years are the distance between boys who slept on different couches. Back at her office, Ava assigns tasks with a conductor's economy. Yvette, pull every incident report from the store in the last 12 months with the words pending, manual review, and self-checkout. Cross-reference with arrests. Darren, map body cam timestamps against the app log. We need a sync analysis we can explain to a judge who hates technology. And I want a memo on the security guard's training. Who certifies him? What does familiarity training look like? And has he ever been written up for encouraging throughput? She turns to Malik. You're with me. He blinks. Me? You think I got good at this without asking the person who lived the scene to sit next to me while I reenact it? Bring your phone. In her conference room, they lay out a mock register, a laptop on a cardboard box, a spare barcode scanner with a dead cable she keeps around because props help judges. She asks Malik to show her exactly how he stood, where his hands were, how the guard's voice sounded when he waved, like he had somewhere to be, Malik says. Like, you're good was about the line, not about me. She nods. That's a detail we'll need. The guard wasn't watching you. He was watching the problem behind you. She pauses. You're good, she repeats, trying on the cadence. You're good. She shakes her head. Juries hear tone even when transcripts don't. He watches her work the way he used to watch Coach break down a zone defense. There's a fascination in seeing systems turned into solvable boards. There's a quiet joy in discovering that the way the world swung against you can be measured, graphed, and gently leveraged until it swings back. They write out a timeline on the whiteboard. 12-13-47, scan. 12-13-49, pending. 12-14-18, guard waves. 12-14-20, exit threshold. 12-14-32, authorization clears. 12-14-34, officers engage. Besides the times, Ava writes verbs: scan, wait, wave, walk, clear, shout. She circles wait and wave in green. These are your innocent words, she says. We will say them so often the courtroom will start to hear them in their sleep. Malik grins despite himself. You talk like Coach talks. He must be very good, she says dryly, and the grin becomes a laugh that feels like taking off a backpack after a long run. The store fights the subpoena because stores like to arrange their privacy the way kings arrange curtains. When the logs arrive, they are redacted in blocks thick enough to tile a floor. Ava files a motion to compel unredacted logs and adds a footnote with a citation to the store's loyalty app privacy policy, which brags about simple, transparent processing. She writes simply, transparently, like a dare, and knows Renfield will read the footnote and sigh. Renfield does sigh, but he also does something else. He takes the elevator to the 3rd floor, where his supervisor keeps a fern that doesn't like fluorescent light. We should cut this loose, he says, placing the body cam still at the green check mark on the desk. The timeline's bad for us, and the guard's report is inconsistent. His supervisor leans back. The judge isn't going to toss it a prelim. We can leverage a plea and move on. A plea to what? Renfield asks. The app cleared. He walked because the guard waved him. His supervisor drums fingers. Resisting. Resisting what? Renfield says, sharper than he intended. Breathing? He catches himself. Sorry, long week. The supervisor's mouth tugs in a shape that is almost empathy and mostly politics. You're not wrong, he admits. But the judge doesn't love Beaumont. If we bail now, he lectures us in open court, and she gets a clip that will turn into 3 more cases we have to defend and lose. Walk it to suppression. If she wins, we call it a teaching moment. Renfield leaves with a stomach that feels like a jury he doesn't trust. At home, Malik tries to do algebra and discovers his brain thinks in case law now. Mrs. Hargreaves brings him tea because she believes in tea the way some people believe in saints. Mr. Hargreaves sits at the table and pretends to do taxes while keeping an eye on Malik's shoulders. Do you think she'll win? Mr. Hargreaves asks, as if Malik has access to outcomes. I think she makes it feel like I'm allowed to, Malik says. It's not an answer, but it's truer than yes. He scrolls through his phone. His teammate Jamal has sent him a clip. A kid in another city cuffed at a self-checkout because the line manager blinked wrong. It's old. It's new. It's everywhere. Malik fingers the wrench emoji Coach sent and wonders how many tools a life requires. 2 days before the suppression hearing, Ava goes to see the security guard. She doesn't announce herself as counsel. She orders a coffee at the shop across from the store and waits until he sits on milk crates out back to smoke the cigarette his manager pretends he doesn't see. A long shift? She asks, tilting her head as if curious about the weather. He snorts. Long year. She nods. You know that kid you waved through. He stiffens. I didn't wave him through. You said you're good, she says mildly. Because the line behind him was getting loud. Because throughput is how your manager measures Fridays. Because you didn't want a scene. He sucks smoke hard enough to burn the paper in the filter. Lady, I don't know you. You don't need to, she says, but you should know this. If you testify that you didn't wave him, and I play your body cam audio enhanced by a lab that hears gnats breathe, the court will think you're either reckless or lying. If you testify that you did wave him, the court will think you were rushed, and your manager set you up to fail. Both can be true. Only one will ruin you. For a second, he's just a boy on a milk crate doing math about grown-up consequences. He flicks ash onto the asphalt. I didn't mean to screw him, he says small. I know, she says. Now don't screw yourself trying to unscrew him. She hands him a card. Tell the truth. If your manager leans on you, call me. He looks at the card like it's a door, and he's not sure if it opens in or out. The hearing arrives. The courtroom feels 10 degrees colder, the air conditioner turned up to make tempers shiver. The judge takes the bench, looking like a man prepared to pretend he hasn't been Googled. Ava calls the first witness, the store's IT manager, a man allergic to syllables longer than 3. She walks him through the payment authorization process like a kindergarten teacher walking a class across the street. She makes him say pending, clears, a manual review until the words lose their power to hide. She gets him to admit that the system sometimes delays cashing in store because fraud filters built for online purchases got copied badly into brick and mortar kiosks. She does it without making him the villain. Because systems are villains that don't mind if you throw the workers at them as sacrifices. Renfield objects twice and wins once. It's enough to feel like he's playing, not enough to change the score. Then comes the security guard. He sits stiffly and doesn't look at Malik. Ava does not attack him. She asks him what Fridays are like at the store. He says, busy enough to miss your lunch without missing it. She asks if his manager ever told him to wave people forward to keep lines moving when the kiosks lag. He hesitates, then nods. She asks if he said, you're good to Malik. He swallows. Yeah, he says, I said that. Did you intend Mr. Carter to think you meant he had paid? I intended him to keep moving so no one yelled at me, he says, and there it is. The whole case in one tired sentence. Ava lets the room hold the sentence. Then she asks gently, did you know the payment cleared 12 seconds later? He closes his eyes. I do now. Renfield tries to salvage. You also wrote that the defendant looked around before leaving, he says, pouncing on the word that prosecutors keep next to suspicion like a pet. Isn't that what suspicious people do? The guard shrugs. Everybody looks around when they're waiting for a machine to tell them what they already know, he says. Ever try to get a kiosk to like you? A ripple of laughter, because you can't live in this century and not understand a joke about teaching machines to approve you. When the guard steps down, Malik exhales a breath he didn't know he'd been rationing. He glances at Ava. She doesn't smile. She doesn't celebrate. She turns another page because victory likes to make you sloppy before it makes you sorry. Finally, Ava calls Officer Trent, body cam owner and shouter of hands. She plays the clip again and walks him through each step. At 12:14:20, when you engage Mr. Carter, what did you believe? He says he believed the transaction had failed and the defendant was leaving with unpaid merchandise. At 12:14:32, she says, what did reality know? Renfield objects to the anthropomorphism of reality. The judge sustains, annoyed. She rephrases. What did the store's system record? He says grudgingly that it recorded the payment as verified. So when you grab Mr. Carter's arm, were you preventing a theft or interrupting a paid departure? Renfield objects again. Calls for a conclusion. Withdrawn, she says smoothly, and lets the question sit anyway, a ghost in the transcript, a sentence that the judge will hear in his head even if the record will pretend it was never asked. When she finishes, she does something no one expects. She doesn't rest. She calls one last witness, herself. Renfield looks startled. The judge looks irritated. The clerk looks worried. Lawyers don't usually testify in their hearings because lawyers don't usually trust courts to understand that truth can fit in more than one box. Ava steps to the stand and swears herself in like a person who has never planned to lie with her hand on any book. Ms. Beaumont, she asks herself, and the room smiles despite itself at the absurd theater of it. Why did you take this case? Objection, Renfield says reflexively. Relevance, Ava glances at him. Your Honor, the defense is offering limited testimony to establish the availability of an alternative non-carceral remedy at the moment of arrest. A community resource the officers could have used but ignored. Foundation for a remedy argument. The judge frowns. The case law is there if he wants to find it. He waves her on, annoyed but curious. She continues. I took this case because I run a clinic that trains stores to adjust their kiosks and trains officers to read the difference between suspicion and system delay. The program is funded by civil penalties we've recovered when stores choose optics over accuracy. At 12:14:20, the officers could have called the number on the back of my card, a hotline the department received 6 months ago. The kiosk would have been reset in under a minute, and a kid would have walked home with a socket set and a clean shirt. She produces a copy of the department-wide memo stamped received. She produces a training roster with Officer Trent's name on it and a signature that looks unconvincing even to its author. The judge's face does a small thing that men's faces do when they suspect they have been made complicit by someone else's laziness. Renfield objects again, but it's the sort of objection you file because your job requires you to dislike gravity. The judge overrules. Ava sits back at the counsel table. No further testimony, she says to herself, and the room breathes the laugh they've been saving because sorrow without humor tastes like metal. When arguments end, the judge leans into his microphone. He has a chance to be expansive, to be big-hearted, to write a little script that future judges quote to sound wise. He chooses small. I'll take it under advisement, he says in the tone of a man who believes decisions ripen in the dark. Outside, the sun feels like a surprise. Malik squints and the cameras remember him. A reporter asks him how it felt to hear the word verified. He nearly says, like someone believed me long enough for the truth to catch up. Ava steers him away again. At the curb, Coach waits with the van that rattles like a pocket of bolts. He claps Malik on the back. You stood your ground without making it quicksand, he says. It is Coach's version of poetry. Saturday? Malik asks. Saturday, Coach says. We fixed the hoop. Ava watches them talk and feels the part of her that used to practice not shaking settle its hands on the table of her ribs. She has one more motion to file, a motion for expedited ruling, which judges dislike as much as they dislike being reminded that clocks exist. She also has an old decision to make, whether to include in her closing the story she has never used in open court because she believes lawyering is not autobiography with citations. That night, she pulls the photo from the shelf. The girl looks back at her, jaw set, eyes dry. Fine, Ava thinks. We'll tell him, not the judge, the boy. The one who needs to know that the door he walked through today stands on hinges someone else hammered in while no one was watching. She writes the closing like a letter to the part of the judge that might remember why he started. She doesn't count on that part answering. She counts on making a record deep enough for an appeal and plain enough for a city to read without a translator. And she sleeps, which is the bravest thing a person can do between battles they can't afford to lose. On the morning the ruling comes down, the courthouse smells like dust and coffee, which is to say, like every morning before something changes. The judge takes the bench with the face of a man who has spent a night pretending that sleep is the same as certainty. On the defense motion to suppress, he begins, the court finds that the officers lacked probable cause at the moment of arrest. The body camera footage and transaction logs demonstrate that payment authorization was pending and then verified within seconds. And the state failed to establish that the defendant's conduct, viewed objectively, constituted theft at the time of detention. The motion is granted. He looks like a person who has bitten his tongue and found it was not as bitter as he expected. A collective inhale, a news alert somewhere vibrating on wood. Malik's shoulders drop an inch. The inch is a mile. The charge of resisting arrest, the judge continues, is dismissed as derivative. He uses derivative because dismissive would be admitting too much. Ava stands. Your Honor, the defense moves to expunge the record and to order the store to send a corrective notice to its loss prevention network indicating that the incident was the result of system delay and employee miscommunication. We also ask that the court consider recommending departmental retraining consistent with the memorandum previously entered into evidence. The judge glances at the clerk. Recommendations cost nothing but pride. So ordered, he says low. Renfield nods almost imperceptibly. He looks like a man relieved to be allowed to do the right thing without being the one who proposed it. Ava turns to Malik. That's the law, she says softly. Now we do the life. Outside, microphones again. This time, Ava gives them a sentence the boy can live with. A glitch isn't guilt, she says. Today the court agreed. We're grateful. She doesn't offer a villain. She offers a moral because morals travel faster than facts. A reporter calls, Ms. Beaumont, are you satisfied with the judge's handling of the case? She could throw the judge under a bus so easily that it would feel like gravity. She doesn't. I'm satisfied that Mr. Carter can go back to being a student, she says. And I'm hopeful the store and the department will do what they promised on paper. She lets the camera pan to Renfield, who nods like a man who has been given an off-ramp and a chance to look decent while taking it. Malik and the Hargreaves step away from the cameras. Coach is there, and the van, and the world beyond the courthouse where systems still hum, but some of the humming sounds less like machinery or more like possibility. They don't go home yet. They drive to the elementary school with the portable hoop and the box of bolts. Saturday has come again. Kids gather like migrating birds, their chatter a weather pattern. Malik kneels on the blacktop with the socket set that brought them here. He tightens bolts, counts turns, wipes sweat with the underside of his forearm. Coach holds post steady, grunting like a man pretending this isn't his favorite part of living. A little boy asks if he can help, and Malik hands him a washer like it's a coin you pay at the door of a better story. Ava arrives quietly, as if courts have taught her that any place with kids in it belongs to quieter voices. She stands off to the side and watches the hoop rise. Mrs. Hargreaves joins her, offering a bottle of water. You didn't have to come, she says. I did, Ava answers. I needed to see the other courtroom. They watch Malik shoot the first basket. It bounces off the rim once, twice, then drops in. The kids cheer like the ball has decided to vote for them. Malik smiles a smile that has teeth and softness both. Mrs. Hargreaves glances at Ava. You said you recognized his look, she says gently. The way you ask someone if they're ready to put words around an old thing. Ava nods. I grew up in placements that changed like seasons, she says. I learned a courtroom dance. Stand straight. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. Smile at the clerk. Don't smile at the prosecutor. Judges are people who have to believe that order saves. Sometimes they forget who pays the price when the order is cheap. I promised myself that when I had a bar card, I'd be a different kind of expensive. She laughs lightly, embarrassed by her metaphor. I don't usually tell clients. You didn't tell him? Mrs. Hargreaves says. I will, Ava says. Not so he can think I'm soft, so he can think I'm proof. She walks to Malik and waits until he's alone at the free throw line. Can I try? She asks, nodding at the ball. He passes it. She shoots with a form that says she knew how once, and the ball kisses the front rim and falls short. I've seen worse, he says. It is the nicest thing a teenager can say to an adult on a basketball court. She smiles. When I was your age, she begins and stops because she hates speeches that start like that. She tries again. When I was your age, I practiced not shaking in rooms like that one. It wasn't because I was brave. It was because adults were tired and I didn't want to wake them. You don't have to do that for us. Not anymore. Not if I can help it. He holds the ball at his hip and looks at her. Really looks. As if checking the laces of a story. He doesn't finish because he has learned not to put other people's lives in boxes with labels he didn't write. I was a kid who learned too early what the inside of a courtroom smells like, she says, like coffee and dust and the end of patience. I want you to learn what it smells like from the outside. She gestures at the blacktop. Like heat and asphalt and the beginning of a game. He nods. I didn't thank you, right? He says, in there. You thanked me just fine, she says, but if you want to help me, keep your grades up past next semester. She nods toward the cluster of younger kids. They need to see you do it. He glances at the kids. He nods again, harder this time. I can do that. 2 weeks later, the store posts a sign above the kiosks. If your payment says pending, wait for the green check. If you need help, ask. We won't tell you you're good until the machine does. The manager hates the sign because it admits something, but corporate likes anything that looks like care. The security guard takes a photo on his break and messages it to a number that has started to feel like a lifeline. We did it, he writes. Ava replies with a thumbs up and a line. Telling the truth is the best over time. Renfield sends a memo up the chain recommending mandatory retraining on kiosk incidents and a review of resisting charges tied to self-checkouts. His supervisor calls it a good idea if someone else claims it. The chief claims it. Everyone gets to be decent for a day at no cost to themselves. He sleeps better than he has in months. Judge Whitcomb receives a copy of the judicial conduct complaint Ava filed. It is written calmly, with quotes and citations, and it is signed by 3 community organizations that have wanted a signature line like this for years. He reads it in chambers surrounded by shelves of law reporters that smell like old rain. He thinks about the girl he saw once in juvenile court, the way she did not shake. He signs a letter accepting a voluntary counseling session on bias and courtroom language, which is a way of not losing and not pretending to win. He asks his clerk quietly to look into the community program that trains judges to visit schools. He calls it outreach. In private, he calls it penance. On a Sunday evening that tastes like starch and possibility, Malik sits at the kitchen table with homework spread like maps. Mrs. Hargreaves chops onions, eyes watering, humming a hymn that ends in a question. Mr. Hargreaves fiddles with a radio that never remembers its presets. The news plays in the background, low, another city, another mistake, another body cam. Malik watches and doesn't feel the familiar slide of helplessness. He feels his hand move to his phone, where a number waits that says when the world hums wrong, you can call and someone will hum back in tune. His phone buzzes with a new message. It's from Ava. Friday, career day, Franklin High. I need a co-presenter who knows how to explain pending better than grown-ups do. Payment is pizza. He laughs, a short, bright sound that sends the cat under the table in a panic. Deal, he texts. She sends back a wrench emoji and a scales of justice emoji. He sends back a basketball, the threads tugged together into a net. He returns to homework. Functions, graphs, and a problem that asks how long two trains to meet. He shades the axes. He writes the steps. He feels the strange relief of rules that behave in public. He thinks of the hallway full of doors and realizes that some open out and some open in, and the trick is to know which and when to pull. On Friday, he stands at the front of his school auditorium while Ava tells a story about kiosks and clocks. He steps to the mic when she nods and says, "Sometimes machines are slow, and sometimes people are. Our job is to make them patient enough to meet in the middle." The kids murmur in that way rooms do when someone says something obvious and brave at the same time. In the back row, a teacher wipes a tear she will blame on allergies. In the corner, a teen who laughs too loudly to survive adolescence as a secret writes the word pending in a sketchbook and draws a green check beside it. Afterward, in the hallway, Malik and Ava stand under a trophy case that displays victories won by older versions of kids whose names nobody here remembers. "You ever gonna tell the judge?" Malik asks. "About you?" Ava shakes her head. "Judges don't need our stories to do their jobs," she says. "Sometimes they need our silence to hear their own." She considers, "But someday, if he asks the right question, I'll give him the right answer." They walk outside into the air that smells like cut grass and buses. Students flood the steps. For a moment, the world seems plotted, points on a grid, arcs that can be modeled, outcomes that depend on variables you can see. "Coach says I can help with a younger team," Malik says as they cross the lot. "He says I'm good at getting kids to look up before they shoot." Ava smiles. "Of course you are," she says. "You've been practicing." He laughs. They reach the curb where the Hargreaves' car idles, where Mrs. Hargreaves taps the steering wheel in time with a song only she can hear. Malik climbs in. He looks back at Ava through the glass. She lifts a hand. He lifts his. The light turns green. Behind them, the courthouse clock ticks in its tower. In a bench-stained office, a judge sits with a pamphlet about bias awareness and the uneasy comfort of a decision he didn't intend to learn from. In an apartment over a store, a security guard sets an alarm for a shift he will do a little differently. In a van with a rattling door, a coach hums a tune without knowing why it makes him hopeful. And in a house where the cat hides whenever laughter comes too quickly, a boy opens his backpack and pulls out a socket set. He places it on the kitchen table like a trophy and like a tool because it is both. He puts his palms flat on the wood and breathes. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. The world hums. For once, it sounds like a machine he might learn to fix.